You've clicked on this video assuming I'm gonna yap about Buu Saga Vegeta, maybe his Cell Saga version, or even DBS manga's Vegeta like the glazer I am. But what if I told you it's about none of these, and instead I'm discussing his Namek Saga variant? The way this man was operating gave a completely different flavour to the character that you honestly never see in Vegeta again, which ranges from his intellect to his pure ruthlessness, so let's begin.
So what's the characteristic that distinguishes these two beings? There's only one answer. Instinct!
Firstly, I must talk about Vegeta's tactics throughout this arc cause this guy was acting like a prime Sir Alex Ferguson. Whenever Vegeta got his hands on a Dragon Ball, his game plan was to always keep one separate from the rest of the cluster, cause he always knew a wish couldn't be granted even if someone had 6 of them. In one instance, Vegeta annihilated a peaceful village with such violence that his Mora arc version was still remorseful for his crimes all those years later, but when the prince retrieved the orb, he chose to submerge it within the lake, since neither the Earthlings or Frieza could steal it off his inventory if he never carried it to begin with. This move was chef's kiss as well, cause a few pages later, the Emperor got outplayed, presuming Vegeta was just gonna hold his collected orbs whilst in search for the other 5. The next big brain play was when the prince's HP topped to 4 thanks to Zarbon. Vegeta's first blast made it seem he fled outside, which both Frieza and Zarbon entirely fell for, leaving the 5 Dragon Balls unguarded in their possession. However, with the prince puzzled at how he could escape with all 5, his best plan of action was to alert the pair of his true location, distracting them with more ki blasts, and in the ensuing chaos, Vegeta successfully lobs all the orbs out of Frieza's ship, declaring checkmate. I also want to point out that Vegeta could have let that victory boost his ego, but instead kept his composure by swimming from the crime scene undetected rather than doing something reckless like flying away. Anywho, I've got to talk about the moment Vegeta realizes his submerged ball was stolen by a radar-assisted Gohan. A minute ago, the prince was on cloud 9 once he took the last orb from Krillin, now having all 7 to his name. So to have all your dreams crushed at the last hurdle by a year 1 must be completely humiliating. This rage scene particularly is one of my favourites because his anger doesn't stem from his family being hurt or even being surpassed, making it way more unique. And as for the specific version, nothing tops the sheer emotion quite like the Ocean dub does. Listen to this.
I'll get you for this! You won't escape my wrath! I'll get you! You're all mine!
Ryan Drummond's performance was nothing short of bone-chilling. I thought I was the one being chased after the first time I heard that, so you don't know how much I feared for Gohan's well-being. Quick aside, but I feel Drummond has the perfect voice for a younger, more reckless Vegeta in the Saiyan and Namek saga, whereas Chris Sabat's voice is more suited for a mature Vegeta, as highlighted by his character Cell Saga onwards. Anyway, that move was so cheeky from Gohan that it left Vegeta in such a cautious state, where the second he sensed him and Krillin heading towards Guru's, this man took a Dragon Ball along for the ride just in case Bulma of all people happened to find the wish granting orbs. Speaking of sensing, let's discuss the 3 abilities Vegeta exploited to cook in this arc: Ki Control, Ki Sensing, and Zenkai's. I really love the prince's unveil of Ki Control, especially with the ominous swirls drawn in the manga, Kui's hilarious reaction to his power level of 24,000 and the satisfaction of the scouters exploding on impact. This might be a hot take, but taking all these factors into account makes Vegeta's ki control much more exciting than the reveal of Super Saiyan Blue. Also, the only reason Vegeta kept his own scouter on when he could sense ki was to flex his new strength at Frieza's men, since the devices also function as communicators. In regards to ki sensing, it sadly gets overshadowed by Zenkai's, but I'd argue these two perks share similar importance before both were made redundant during the rest of Z, GT and Super. What I love most about the ability is it spins the whole cat and mouse dynamic on its head, especially once the Namekians destroy the scouters of Frieza's men. To illustrate, the Emperor is the dominating force that everyone wants to avoid. However, since he can't sense ki, Gohan and Krillin's only advantage is being able to fly around the planet unnoticed. This benefit gets thrown out the window when Vegeta's added to the mix, because even though he's also much weaker than Frieza, he outclasses the Earthlings, meaning they're forced to be methodical in how they travel across Namek. Our heroes constantly stumbled upon Vegeta, forcing them to suppress their ki, but the prince always notices whenever their energy disappears, which just enhances the tension in scenes like this. The first time, the Earthlings nearly got exposed by a frightened Dende, but sheer luck saved their lives when a fish happened to be in the area with its own faint ki. Later on, even after experiencing this horrifying situation, Krillin got a bit too elated with the Guru boost that he didn't notice his ki was sticking out like a sore thumb for Vegeta to pounce on, and due to his oversight, the Earthling had no choice but to concede the only ball to his name. Unlike Baldi over here, Gohan was aware of Vegeta's arrival, opting to hide behind a rock to control his power, but once again the prince spots his ki suddenly vanishing, now ready to obliterate everything in a mile radius, forcing the hybrid to announce himself in the hopes Vegeta doesn't see the ball he plucked from the lake. The moment Gohan and Krillin reunite, their next step was to commute to Guru's place to unlock the former's potential. However, from pure fear of Vegeta, these two began flying at a measly 10 miles per hour to remain in stealth mode. To put it into perspective, they were traversing for almost a whopping 4 days. Them preferring to go at a snail's pace just signifies how scary Vegeta was at the time. Assuming they were far enough, the pair then began moving at top speed to reach Guru's in an hour, but Vegeta was camping the whole time to lock on their key signatures, intending to claim that final ball. Moving on, the next thing that must be mentioned is Vegeta's use of Zenkais. If you boil it down, the prince went from being Kui level all the way to potentially rivaling third form Frieza by the end of the arc, and I love how this ability gave Vegeta the platform to execute each one of Frieza's henchmen. For me, watching him farm the XP necessary to kill the higher tier minions like his Elden Ring is one of the most satisfying progressions in this series as a whole. The prince's first Zenkai after the Saiyan saga was more than enough to utterly humble both Kui and Dodoria, where Vegeta was so strong he sniped the latter without breaking a sweat and had Kui singing. The next power-up arose from his near-death experience against Zarbon. No one seems to mention how crazy this beating was, especially when he literally took the prince skydiving, almost killing him then and there. However, his grave mistake was healing Vegeta to pry the Dragon Ball's location out of him, cause this second Zenkai meant the prince had surpassed Zarbon even when transformed. Look how nasty of a sternum check he dished out before destroying the monster's digestive system, which drowned him in the process. Finally, his last Zenkai before scrapping with the Emperor was handed by Goku in the form of a Senzu to heal his wounds. This pushed Vegeta to new heights, where he transitioned from getting destroyed by Recoome to manhandling Jace with a massive grin on his face. Moments of this fight I keep replaying is that devious headshot Vegeta lands whilst emerging from the smoke, and the clean slash that pierces Jace's armor solely to give him a 4K HD view of the prince's face before his inevitable demise. Two reasons why these wins are so satisfying is 1, because of how haram Vegeta acted mid-fight, sniffing for any sort of advantage possible. For example, this man sneak attacked Dodoria into the ocean to get first blood, and during his second fight with Zarbon, Vegeta sprinkled dust into the monster's eye just to catch him off guard with a devilish blow to the spine. But the most egregious of the lot is when Gordo paralyzed Gohan and Krillin. You know what Vegeta does? No word of a lie, the Saiyan sliced Gordo's head clean off while he was preoccupied. Sometimes I question where Vegeta's Saiyan pride began from, because in this arc it was not part of his vocabulary whatsoever with how dirty he was fighting. The reasoning for his ruthlessness is kind of explained when Vegeta knees Berta in the neck and fires at Recoom's backside. Goku asks why he doesn't show the same mercy that was given to him back on Earth, so the prince retorts,
Oh, they don't deserve any favors. They're scum, Kakarot, believe me. But they have taken mercy on your son and your friend. If you'd arrived 10 minutes later, they'd be gone right now.
Vegeta's speaking nothing but the truth. Why would you spare someone that was thrilled at breaking a 5-year-old's neck? This just goes to show how dangerous Namek was and how they had to pull every trick out the bag no matter how cheap it was, since at the end of the day this is life or death we're talking about. As for the second reason, most of Frieza's minions were begging to be spared, particularly Zarbon and Kui, who had the nerve to propose a team up. Them pleading for their lives was beautiful to see, because remember, all these guys were belittling Vegeta over the course of his life, seeing him as nothing more than a filthy monkey. That's why I like the quote,
"The Saiyans are a true warrior race. Don't underestimate us."
because even though it's not as flamboyant as the speeches he gives later in the series, it represents the utter mockery and condescension he received on the Frieza Force. Murdering each one was simply his way of relieving that torment. Think of it as Vegeta getting revenge against his abusive ex-employees. The only henchman I have a sliver of respect for is Guldo, since even after getting beheaded, the guy was still trash-talking Vegeta with racial slurs. The last section I'll delve into is the grueling battle against the Emperor Frieza. Before we continue, can we talk about how amazing Vegeta's new armor looks? Genuinely, I prefer this outfit to the one he wears in the Cell Saga solely because of the subtle navy of his gi compared to the brighter lapis blue. Anywho, the Earthlings were quivering in fear once the Tyrant released his ki. However, my glorious prince stood resolute, affirming that if all three of them jumped him in unison, there's a chance they'd come out on top. He also mentions that thanks to their battles, even Krillin and Gohan are growing in strength, especially the latter, who has latent potential that even he cannot fathom. Vegeta then backs up his claim when Frieza charges straight at him. The Saiyan grabs the Emperor's right wrist, followed by his left fist for the pair to unleash such ferocious energy that it shattered Frieza's newly delivered scouter. I know Vegeta was still a tad weaker, shown by him breathing heavy post-struggle, but watching him resist Frieza's onslaught was enough to have Gohan believing Team Freestar could actually win. One of my only critiques of Vegeta is that he encouraged Frieza to transform. I'm sure part of him knew he needed the Earthlings to beat the Emperor, so why would the Saiyan underestimate the power of his second form, as if he hasn't just grown strong from his Zenkais? From there, Vegeta doesn't do a whole lot when Frieza pulls out his second and third forms. All he really did was spectate the fights involving Gohan and Piccolo until he informs Krillin of the chance to obtain one last Zenkai to become a Super Saiyan. His plan was to get the Earthling to fatally wound him so that once he's healed by Dende, Vegeta could rival Final Form Frieza. However, Dende refused to treat the injuries of someone as heartless as the Prince, prioritizing to heal his fellow Namekian brother. Krillin and Piccolo eventually convince Dende to heal Vegeta for another Zenkai, so the Prince expresses his appreciation by kicking the White Mage, exclaiming he should be grateful for being allowed to live. Thanks to the Zenkai, he can now track Frieza's movements and even saves Gohan from falling victim to the Death Beam. But let's not downplay this feat, cause no one could actually see the Emperor's move except the Prince. Anywho, Vegeta says he only saved the hybrid to show off his new capabilities. However, I think this was him subconsciously repaying the favour for when the reverse happened against Raccoon. Furthermore, I feel at this point Vegeta acknowledges Gohan as a true Saiyan warrior with how he was still scrapping with Frieza even with the odds against him. We're now gonna pretend Vegeta did not just shed tears of despair or get completely demolished whilst Frieza was eating seafood and skip to when Goku joins the battle. Vegeta explaining the true reason for their planet's destruction to his fellow pure-blooded Saiyan is one of the most moving scenes in the entire show, particularly when the Prince pleads for him to beat Frieza with his own hands. Goku understands Vegeta was most upset about playing as Frieza's puppet, and in one of the few times in the manga he embraces more of his Saiyan heritage thanks to Vegeta's last speech, culminating in this panel, where Goku swears he'll defeat the Tyrant in the name of the Namekians and the Saiyans killed under his rule. The other aspect of Vegeta's dying wish wish was when he begged for Goku to quit preaching about mercy since it contradicts the behaviour of a Super Saiyan in folklore. I love this interaction because Goku initially refuses to act ruthless like it did back in OG Dragon Ball during the Red Ribbon Army arc, but this whole concept of mercy comes in full circle when the Saiyans forced to blast Frieza once his kindness was betrayed. The face Goku makes after winning the Beam Clash shows he was not proud of doing that, but ultimately ends up proving Vegeta right all along. Some people out there don't deserve mercy after all. Unlike Vegeta, Ribrianne is hated by a majority of the community, so please click here to see if it's justified.